was always something happening in the area.
Used to have a lot of parties.
When we went dancing, of course.
We used to go to the dances together. We went to the dances.
We used to go dancing in the back of a truck as well.
There were heaps of country dances.
They used to have the dances on Saturday night.
We had a dunny race once.
We had a rodeo and camp draft.
Horses and bulls used to come out and just buck from one end to the other.
39 musters.
So we climbed the bluff.
It's wonderful to go out on the boat, camp at the dam every weekend and water ski. And
There was always something happening.
Well, there was nearly a dance every Saturday night, and it was usually a different place in the valley that we'd go. Like there was in Buchanan. Everybody would have their turn each Saturday night at a dance. There was lots of festivals, pineapple festivals, things like that we were very involved in. They had big processions down the street from the school to the recreation ground. Big floats, lots of photos of all that. Yeah, and they'd have races. We had a dunny race once. A lot of the young local girls, every float that there was, and I think there would have been probably up to 20 floats, and there was a princess on each float. And then they'd have the ball at night, and they'd crown the princess of the... That's where they'd crown the princess on that night.
There was always something happening in the area. They used to have kitchen teas for all the young girls that got married in the area. The whole community would throw a little kitchen tea and they'd have a dance and take little gifts along, which was nice. A lot of our childhood was spent playing sport. We didn't have the access to be able to get to Gympie like these days where you just jump in the car and you drive to town. So most of our time was spent actually in Amamore and riding our bike to Kandanga and across to Travie.
There was a friend of mine, Faye Herbert at the time, and we used to go to the dances together at Kandanga, Amamore, and met these two guys one night and I thought, they're pretty good looking fellas. So feeling was mutual, I think, and actually we followed them, they followed us home from, they lived on a side road, Diamondfield Road at the time, and they followed us home one night, or they might have gone first, and we pulled up behind them, something like that, I can't quite remember. Had a bit of a chat, and I fell in love with one of them, and my friend was a bit keen on the other, but he wasn't so keen on her. But anyway, so we ended up getting married then in 1953.
Well, we used to go to dance to the picture theatre in Kandanga in the back of the milk truck, and we used to go dancing in the back of a truck as well. Cover over with a tarp. There was, in the winter time, there was always about 10 of us in the back. All school friends, we used to go all around the place, Belli and all around the place, Adrienne's dad used to teach us in the Amamore Hall. We used to have dances in the Amamore Hall. Oh, we had all sorts, badminton and all sorts of things in the Amamore Hall, besides dancing,
They used to have dances up in the mess hall. Women used to have their meals up there. Used to have dances there and lots of parties, wasn't there?
yes.
Actually, we've still got friends today from there, from the dam,
Yes.
But it was a good community. We've done lots of things together.
Helped
Quite a
each
lot.
other.
Yeah.
Yes. They used to hold some really big dances and balls here
Oh, yeah.
in the hall. And beautiful dance floor. They never have to sweep it. Lovely.
Public hall, near the showground. Have all sorts. You just pay to go in, and but you always have a cup of tea them days on the side. And we used to have the tallies outside and draft. They used to have skating there, roller skating too. They used to put the seats all away and roller skate. Morsley had the picture theatre in the baker shop. Then later on, Charlie Stubbins bought the theatre. At half time of the pictures, that between Kandanga and Imble, they'd swap the movies over. They'd drive halfway and change them over movies over half time. First one you saw in Kandanga would be the second one here.
And Keith, weren't they old canvas seats?
Yeah, the old canvas ones, no salt, no, all talking here, Gone with the Wind and all them. Mrs. Miniver. What was the one at Western Australia? What they call that? Not Sunny, the one, I can't think of the name of it
Not
now.
Smiley.
Smiley, I think it might have been. I like that,
With
yeah.
Chips Rafferty.
Yeah, Chips Rafferty one, yeah.
So you used to go kissing Val up the back seats?
I never took you to the pictures, did I?
No, I didn't go to that theatre.
You'd have caught me with another girl if you did, so this is what you didn't.
She worked in the shop, and the shop used to stay open till 9 o'clock at night. I don't know what time it opened in the morning, but it stayed open till 9. And they used to have the dances on Saturday night, so she'd work in the shop till the shop closed, and then she'd go to the dance. And that was the big thing, the Saturday. And I can remember going to dances, but I was just a little kid anyway. But yeah, and even, you know, they discovered gold in Imbil way back. But Mum told me that there was still, while her mother was alive, and she died in 1950, while my grandmother was still alive, there would still be people coming in asking for credit because they knew where the gold was.
How it happened was he was, you know, I think Amamore was the hub of the valley at that time. Might have been, in his estimation it was. And we didn't. My sister married a fellow from Amamore too eventually. So there's only two of us. And when we used to, well, after I left school, we went to the dances, you know. I was allowed to go because Mari was older than me. She was a few years older than me. And after I left school, and I started work at the butcher shop. I did all the books and all that sort of thing. And anyway, this night we went to the dance, and I was 16 at the time. And then Earl came in from Amamore with some of his friends, and they were at the dance too, and that's where we met. And that's been the story ever since then. Well, we always went to the dances in town, but we weren't allowed to go out to the bush dances in those days, you know. It's like swimming, you know. Dad used to take the boys swimming, but there's nowhere for girls to go swimming, so, you know, that was the story of that era. But, when we always went, when we went to Amamore, they always, for their holidays, they used to cover the pineapples with the paper so they didn't get sunburnt. And for their holiday then, they all went camping down at, Rainbow Beach now, you know, those areas, all those. His father used to take them. I think it was Sunshine Beach or something. But no, he taught me to swim out there. He thought it was terrible a girl couldn't swim. When we went to Amamore, we always went to everything, like show. Well, we always went to the Gympie show, and we went to the valley, you know, any things out at the valley that was on, and the dances and the pictures and all those sort of things, you know. Yeah.
There was always something happening, and we used to put on dinners. Don't happen anymore, but we did big dinners. We fed 200 people, and then we did the entertainment at the same time. So we'd do a concert in the public hall, and we did quite a few of those actually, and sad that nothing like that happens anymore. Oh, it was mostly through the church that we did those sorts of things. We had all sorts of people there. We had lots of locals. We had visitors. We had town people. So it didn't just stay with the church people. It was widespread.
This one's about the music that I've told you about, which is it's probably a bit of a ramble here, but I just thought, well, just as there's a lot of music in Gympie, and that originated with the gold rush when all of the different cultures and a lot of Irish people came here, and I guess, you know, that accompanies it, and that had spread into the Merry Valley townships. There was a lot of music-related things, like there were heaps of country dances, and they must have had some sort of a roster because they were on Friday nights, I think, and they seemed to be around the place, but I didn't ever go to a country dance.
My parents were not that way inclined. And there were lots of concerts on, including school ones and fancy dress balls. And there were also church festivals and the music with the church. We had, our family used to worship at a church at Kandanga, and we used to go. Dad was a fairly keen churchgoer, and we used to go most Sundays. Well, we always sang something during those church services, and then at certain times of the year the mission priest would come and there'd be even more singing. And I realised when I got older that I quite liked church singing is because of that. But anyway, getting back to it, and there were always marching bands on the sports days. We all played the fife, which must have just sounded dreadful as we were marching along. And there were always bands. There were always either family bands or young blokes around. There was always a band available for everything that they wanted. And as well as that, I'm getting to my point, there was our travelling music teacher, and that was Mr. Williams. And I don't know whether anyone's told you, but in the early times when we were there in the 50s, the doctor always used to come out weekly and set up in the hall and do whatever. Mum used to take me down to get weighed and things like that. I don't know how long that lasted for, and I don't know if they came every week. But Mr. Williams used to come every week, and he went from Dagon through to Imbil, and I think it was over 3 days, and the students from Bruloo who wanted to learn, they would come into Imbil. And I have a feeling that our day was Wednesday, so I'd reckon he started at Dagon first and had a few students, and then he used to set up in the hall for the day. And then we would walk down the Amamore School's on a hill where it still is, and we'd walk down what we used to call the big hill, down to the main street. And I've realised in later years, I was thinking, oh, gee, we were allowed to do all that by ourselves. But the teachers could actually see us from the veranda, making sure we got there or we were safe and things like that. And I've been thinking he's either stayed at the Kandanga Hotel or the Imbil Hotel. I think it was the Kandanga Hotel. And I do feel he was quite optimistic for our progress because we were only country kids, and we got a piano eventually. We bought one. But I know some of the other children wouldn't have had a piano. That would have been the only time they touched the piano. But we had that piano all the time. I gave it to my daughter just last year when COVID was on, so she could teach her daughter the piano. So that's been in our family all that time, be over 60 years. But anyway, as I said, he was quite optimistic, and as well as learning to practically play the piano, we had to do theory, and none of us were very keen on that. But not only that, he used to enter us in the exams in the Trinity College of London and the AMEB exams. And also later on, as we became a bit more competent, he'd put us in the Gympie Stedford, which, as you know, they've always been fairly big events, and they were well contested in those days. And then I can recall and we used to go, I'm not sure whether we went for a half-hour lesson or whether we did half an hour theory while the other person, there were always two of us there, half an hour theory while the other person did had their piano lesson, and then we swapped over. And then I can remember my lesson went into the lunch hour, so I didn't miss much school. Somebody made sure I didn't miss too much school. And then we had to do these theory exams and go to the central school, which was just the brick building that's there now. And they were on a Saturday morning. Every extracurricular thing was on a Saturday morning in those times. And I can just remember going there. We were given this card and it had your name on it and what class theory exam you were doing. And there were all these people, because everyone from all over the district, all the kids were all doing various grades of theory exams. And I was just absolutely overcome because I went to a little country school,
And anyway, we all seemed to pass our exams quite well. And I think now I mightn't have been to... Well, I didn't do too badly in my theory exams, but maybe they were fairly technical and easy, I don't know. But I think now it was very good preparation for when I was to go to different places, you know, to go to Brisbane later on, to go to college and go to uni, because then I knew what it felt like to be the strange person thinking you're the only person in the world. So I think Mr. Williams and Mrs. Williams, his wife, she was very well known. She was the better musician of the two, and they were up on Red Hill. You might know this from other people who've told you. And they had an old Queenslander up on Red Hill next to the Phoenix Hotel, which I think the driveway was their house. And a few weekends before the exam, Mr. Williams would invite us in on Saturday afternoon, and we would play for Mrs. Williams because she, as I said, she was the better musician, and she'd give us all the etiquette of how to be in a music exam, because you had to prepare your stool and then sit down and put your music out a certain way, and you know, you had to answer the questions. You had questions as well, and do all that. And she would show us all of that. So I think probably that Mr. and Mrs. Williams, over the many years, they did all that for lots and lots of people all around Gympie. They helped a lot of people with growing confidence and, you know, to widen their horizons a little bit. So I think they did a great service to the community as well as to the Merry Valley. They were crucial to the Merry Valley. After we did our music exam, you could go out to you had to go in the front door and out the front door, and then we go down the steps, up her side kitchen steps, and she had this beautiful morning tea or afternoon tea laid out for us. She'd obviously been cooking for days beforehand, and that was our reward for doing our exam. Even though I was never a terrific musician, I had the opportunity, and I really love music and listening to it, and love going to musicals and things, and I put it down to them. And my parents too, for, you know, letting us learn music.
Whilst the Merry Valley's been basically recreation for me as well as work, in my early years, I used to do a bit of hunting, not for animals, and I used to go to the dances at the Long Flat Hall. But I've been to lots of fetes and functions. Years ago, there used to be a draft horse field day at Dagan. I'd love to see someone resurrect that again too. But been to a lot of bush dances at Kandanga. Yeah, you name it, I've been to it.
Oh, good.
As well as the fact that I was in Apex when we started the muster. The first couple were out at Widgie, and then we moved from Widgie up to Amamore. I think in one capacity or another, I have volunteered at 39, thank you, Duck, 39 musters.
Oh, wow.
I've been...
It's going to be a big 40 this year, isn't it?
It'll be the 40th, but in some way or other, I've been involved in every single muster, even if it was just driving transport cars. So, yeah, recreation in the valley is very, very real in my life.
When we went dancing, of course, we danced, well, knew a lot of people when we danced. That was a social thing when I was a kid. Oh, yes. It was a wonderful thing, that one. Never came to the Gympie show until I was an adult, actually.
1969. I was taken along with a member of the Shea Society to a meeting, and he paid my membership, and junior membership back then was 20 cents. So that's how I became involved in the Shea Society, and have been attached to the Shea Society and involved with them for 50 years. Last year I handed over and said that was enough after 50 years and retired. But I saw a lot of things change in the Shea Society over those years. Before I even got associated with the Shea Society, my parents, Mum and Dad, they were tied up with the Shea Society, volunteering on Shea Day, etc., etc. Mum did a lot of cooking in the pavilion, etc. And my grandfather lent his ground, which is right beside the showgrounds, to be used as At one stage it was used as a car park, and at other stages for the novelty events for the young kids with their pony club and that on show day. I've been associated for 50 years, fairly active member while I was around. While I was away, I used to only come home for the show, etc. But while I was around here, I was fairly active. A lot of volunteering. It's a lot of work. And in about 2009, 1992, I was secretary for a couple of years. And then in 2009, I became vice president. And within about 18 months, I ended up president because the president we did have resigned for personal reasons. And then I just took over as president, and I was there right up until last year, February 2020, when I finished up. Back in the 60s, the rodeo part of the Show Society was held in the full arena. There was no such thing as a confined area like a small rodeo arena. It was just the full ring, and horses and bulls used to come out and just buck from one end to the other. And then in the late 60s, about the time I joined the Show Society, the NRA was formed, and their riders and competitors demanded that they have a small arena to compete in. So that's when the small arena came to being. Over time, back in the 60s, there was a couple of really good horticultural people out there. Old George Kerridge grew crop after crop of vegetables, and he used to bring a truckload of vegetables to the show for the pavilion display. And a full truckload he used to bring, and they'd spend all day exhibiting them and setting them up, and needless to say, George took out most prizes. These days are nowhere near as good as what they used to be. So you walked in the front door of the hall, and the middle of the hall, right from front to back, was just vegetables. The right-hand side was pineapples. Pineapple industry was very big in those days. And from the front to the back of the hall was pineapples on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, it was needlework, and then right down near the front of the hall was the cooking. And the flower displays were up on the pavilion. On the the flowers were up on the stage in the pavilion, which we still have everything today, but nowhere near the volume of what was back then, And the Show Society's changed a lot. Like volunteers back then, they were dime a dozen. They were the backbone of all societies. They still are, but it's very hard to get volunteers now. Whereas back then, the whole town put their hand up to help their annual show. Whereas now, you have the old diehards, just a handful of them, but you've nearly got to, you nearly have to beg to get people to come and give you a hand. And then they want to know what's in it for them.
In my younger days, I rode at the Imbil Show when they put for quite some time they just had a rodeo and camp draft. Then they put the show events back on, and I used to ride at that. And then when I had my children, I used to work with Jeannie Barry in the ring as a steward. And she was a great person. She was our pony club mother, and and then I also did Gympie Show as a steward. I also rode in Gympie Show when I was younger too, old Handy and the ringmaster, and we'd get in there and work. Good. It's good to do it.
Oh, the Imbil Show used to be three main ones: George Kerridge, Phil Waller, that one there, and George Garrett. There was always a big fight between them who had the best, those three people. I used to ride in the show. I got ribbons and everything from that. But see, I left school when I was 13, and the under 14, I went in the under 14 events, and I was winning quite a few. So the comp said, "You can't compete anymore." I said, "Why?" "Because you're not going to school." Even though I was under 14, because I wasn't go to school, they wouldn't let me compete anymore. And I used to ride race horses on the track too, figure eighting and all that sort of thing, flag racing and all that sort of thing. I used to play polo cross too. I used to run the chainsaw events too at the show. I was the judge, I was the boss. Oh, not really. I think just different sized logs and different angles, and that's about what I had, Used to drop the hanky When the hanky dropped, that's when they'd start. As soon as that dropped, away they'd go. Yeah. When I was younger, we used to put nets in all the time with Dad, yeah. But when I went up to 15 or more, then I didn't do much fishing at all. We put the net in once up there with Merv Brown. Merv had one arm, so he's got to take the cord across pull the net across. And when he got halfway through, all the net got tangled up and he's towing the whole net across. He drowned. Rubber station, yeah, before the dam was built up, yeah. I used to take, the mail used to come to me and I'd take it up there for him. And he'd want a bit of bread taken up and that sort of stuff, yeah. But after the dam, they had to put a back road right round through the back for him to get access, yeah. One of the web singers, one of the boys, yeah. Fabian or Clavian or one of them, I can't think of which one it was. Bill was the oldest one. There's no special place like we used to go up further and just creek crossings and nice areas, that sort of thing, yeah. Yeah. Lovely spots along that sort of thing, yeah. No particular place, but different ones, yeah. I used to take people out there and have a look and up M. Travis and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
We've both been on the Mary Valley Show Society for over 30 years and we've seen a lot of changes through the Show Society. I'm also patron with the Lake Barumba Fish Stocking Group, which used to be called the Lake Barumba Family Fishing Classic. And we started that off to create interest for tourism in the Mary Valley. The Fish Stocking Group actually get funding from council, state government, other bodies to put fish into the lake, which is great for tourism being my portfolio when I was on council. And it's wonderful to go out on the boat. There's photos that I've supplied. Out on the boat with the fingerlings, tipping the fingerlings into the water. It's such a buzz to know that those fingerlings like this big are going to be this big and somebody's going to actually catch it. They have tag fish competitions. They have catch and release, Saratogas and so on, catch and release. So that is really, yeah, it's fun and it's so wonderful for tourism. I love it. And it's really good. So, yeah, there's so much to tell.
I met Blair and we, did what young people do. We'd camp at the dam every weekend and water ski and basically have a good life. And in those days, it was a lot less frenetic. Like, we worked in Gympie and we played hard on the weekend and you didn't jump on planes and things. Like my kids, when they in between uni, would go, on a holiday overseas. It wasn't that accessible in those days for us and we didn't make as much money as they do. So I met my husband water skiing at Barumba Dam and it was, that was something he had done forever. His parents have told me he was 5 or 6 when he got on skis. The dam was built in 1964, so that's when Blair was born, but his parents were among the first to water ski on the dam. So as local business people, they were involved in the camp and the building of it, and then they went on to use it recreationally, and of course it's an irrigation supply, so it's a very important piece of infrastructure for the valley. But we used to water ski every weekend and I'm not elegant, but I can do it. And we have many stories of camping up there on the weekend. At the time I met Blair, there was a water skiing association and they put on a show when I first met him and did the tower with 3 skiers, 2 skiers, 1 skier, that kind of thing. So that was all, to be involved in that is just fun. And when you're early adulthood, you're just going out, you've got fast boats, you've got fit people, and you just have a whale of a time. I've actually got a photograph of 3 of the guys barefooting on the dam, so 3 up behind the boat, which is stunning to watch. And they all wish they could do it now. They're all a bit older now, but skiing has gone more to wakeboarding, so you don't see a lot of skiers and barefooters in our region anymore. And I think that's a bit of a shame, but it's a great day out. It was actually funny because prior to us hearing about the dam, which came out of the blue and there was no groundwork locally that we were aware of, an international artist was working with Julie Gibbs at the Gympie Gallery and Francois, and he came up with the idea with Julie of running a site-specific art exhibition, and he was living in the Mary Valley, so he wanted to run it in the Mary Valley. And the idea, he'd done these things around the world. He's an amazing fellow, very striking Frenchman, and he... the upshot was that they brought 10 international artists of renown to be hosted on 10 farms in the Mary Valley, and then there were another 4 artists who were also hosted, and so they did more regional works, and then the 10 artists on the farms did a site-specific art, so relating to the environment, the stories that they hear about that place, using materials usually from that place. So we had everything from a beautiful dead tree that had checked out squares all the way up, and there was a story behind that. We had a German artist on our place, Cornelia, and she was quite affected by stories of the Indigenous experiences on our property at Imbil, and so she came up with a fantastic red painted reed spear that pierces through a dead tree on our place. I've got a photograph of my husband and Cornelia at the top of 3 ladders in the bucket of the tractor installing this piece, which would not have passed risk assessment. But it was amazing, again, for young children and myself. I'm a writer. I'm not, I appreciate art, but this brought art into our area and was a great eye-opener. And the whole community aspect, the blending of the villages, we had welcome events for the artists in each town, so it pulled people through the valley to each town, and that actually laid the foundation for the valley pulling together when the next thing came along, which was the Traveston Crossing Dam. Mary Valley Scarecrow Festival had its origins up in the Mullaney Montville area. One of the community groups up there sort of got it off the ground, and then it was pulled down through the valley to Dagan and Lagoon Pocket area around mid-2000s. The Mary Valley Inc., the organisation at the time, was, very keen to revitalise it and grow it in our area as a bit of a tourist attraction. The idea is go scarecrow spotting, drive through the valley, have a coffee, have a pub lunch as a bit of a tourist driver. And it was identified in some tourism studies at the time that the self-drive market from Brisbane, we're within that 2-hour area, perfect. And it's quirky and it's country and corny.
Another childhood adventure we used to have was to go for a walk. So we'd climb the bluff, have a picnic up the top and then climb down again.